Have you ever wondered why Iran is today considered to be an enemy of the West, certainly by U.S. and British politicians and by news journalists? Since January 2002, the United States has termed Iran part of something called the Axis of Evil. North Korea is a regime arming with missiles and weapons of mass destruction while starving its citizens. Iran aggressively pursues these weapons and exports terror, while an unelected few repress the Iranian people's hope for freedom. Iraq continues to flaunt its hostility toward America and to support terror. The Iraqi regime has plotted to develop anthrax and nerve gas and nuclear weapons for over a decade. States like these and their terrorist allies constitute an axis of evil arming to threaten the peace of the world. This wasn't always the case. When I was born in the 1970s, Iran was actually a close ally of the West. So what happened to change this situation as usual? The machinations of Britain and the United States in interfering in other countries played a big role. Some time ago, I touched on some of this interference when I covered the 1941 military coup in Iran, where the country almost had a pro-Nazi government before it was eliminated by a joint British-Soviet invasion. In this video, I want to look more closely at how Iran changed between the establishment of its last royal dynasty, the Pahlavi, in 1925, up to the overthrow of that dynasty in 1979, and the creation of the Islamic Republic of Iran, ushering in a very different regime, a regime that is still in power in Tehran. Today, Iran is one of the world's most ancient civilizations, called for most of its history, Persia. Once the great empire of the ancient and the medieval world, modern Iran, emerged from the 18th century when an entity called the Sublime State of Iran was founded in 1789 under the rule of the Qajar dynasty, themselves Turkmen tribal peoples. This dynasty had deposed the last Shah, or king of the Shah dynasty, which had ruled most of contemporary Iran and parts of Iraq, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia as well. In 1796, the Qajar leader Aga Muhammad Khan. Qajar was formerly crowned as Shah of Iran. Iran continued to develop throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, but the state was threatened through most of its existence by the expansion of the Russian Empire. During World War I, Iran was involved in a series of conflicts with the Ottoman British and Russian empires, costing the lives of some 2 million Persian civilians, mostly caused by the Armenian genocide enacted by the Ottoman Turks and the Persia famine of 1917-19. The Qajar government became much weakened and inevitably, as I've discussed in a previous video, this dynasty was overthrown in a coup in 1921 and a new dynasty installed to power in 1925. The new king was Reza Shah, and his dynasty was called the Pahlavi dynasty. Reza Shah had been an army officer of humble birth, leading a British Runan Persian Cossack brigade during World War I. And Raza used this military force to seize power in Tehran, something the British were very happy to support as it sought client leaders that would assist its own interests in the region. Reza Shah became an outspoken admirer of Hitler in the 1930s, straining his relations with the British. It appears Razer's admiration for Hitler stemmed primarily from the Führer's humble origins and rise to power, which Razer saw mirrored in himself. When World War II broke out, Iran remained neutral. However, following the German invasion of the Soviet Union in June 1941, the British wanted to supply Stalin with weapons and material to keep him in the war. London wanted those arms and other materials to be shipped on railways through neutral Iran to the USSR. They were very unhappy with the strong German influence over Iran, and so Britain and the USSR jointly invaded on the 25th of August, 1941. Iranian military resistance quickly collapsed, and in September, Reza Shah was forced to abdicate, replaced as king by his son Mohammad Reza. The British actually wanted to put the previous Qajar family back on the throne in the form of Prince Hamid Mera, then an officer in the British Royal Navy. But the people seemed to want the Crown Prince Muhammad Raza instead, and the British very reluctantly accepted him. The supply route to the Soviet Union, called the Persian Corridor, was thus assured. His father, Shah, was exiled by the British to Medius post-war because Iran bordered Soviet Union. The Soviets became Iran's enemy. They had occupied parts of northern Iran known as Iranian Azerbaijan and Kurdistan during World War II, and they had tried to establish their separatist governments loyal to Moscow. It also helped to fund the Iranian Communist Party. Red Army troops finally left Iran in June 1946. On the 11th of December, 1946, the Iranian army entered the formerly Soviet-controlled portions of northern Iran and removed the puppet communist governments. The Shah loved flying and spent huge sums building up the Imperial Iranian Air Force. Britain and the United States supplying most of the aircraft. The Shah was also a major playboy. He divorced his first wife and spent much time trolling the nightclubs of Italy, Paris, and London, living the high life with various actresses. It wasn't long before someone tried to kill him. On the 4th of February, 1949, at a ceremony at Tehran University, the Shah was grazed in the face by an assassin's bullet. It was revealed officially that his assassin was a member of the Iranian Communist Party. However, more research has shown that he was probably from a fundamentalist Islamic group. The Shah's second wife was half German, half Iranian, and was allegedly only 16 years old when she was married to the 32-year-old Shah. The real power in Iran in the 1950s was the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, and the emphasis should be placed on the word Anglo. Immensely profitable Britain controlled 51% of the company since 1914, and in 1954 it would be renamed the British Petroleum Company, known today as BP. Britain reaped enormous profits from its control of Iranian oil and was loath to give them up. It also meant that Britain remained a major player in the post-war U.S.-dominated world. However, the election of a very pro-Iranian Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh in 1950 would throw a spanner into the works. A nationalist Mossad rallied parliament to nationalize the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, placing the Iranian government on a collision course with London, who would not sit back and allow Mossad to destroy its profits nor its preeminent position in the region. Washington, D.C. was also becoming concerned as President Harry S. Truman was being briefed that a communist coup was likely in Tehran, paranoid suspicions inherited by the incoming administration of Dwight D. Eisenhower. In fact, just before the 1952 presidential election, the British had invited a senior CIA officer named Kermit Roosevelt Jr. to London to discuss what could be done about Mossad and his government. Kermit Roosevelt was a grandson of famous U.S. President Teddy Roosevelt and had been an OSS officer, the forerunner of the CIA in World War II MI6, and the CIA decided on a joint operation, Sinamed Ajax, to remove Mossadegh from office and stop the nationalization of Anglo-Iranian oil. Ajax was significant because it would be the first of 3 such regime change operations authorized by CIA Director Allen Dulles. The second would be a coup in Guatemala in South America in 1954 to depose the democratically elected government there and put in power a U.S. puppet. And the third and most infamous would be the 1961 Bay of Pigs invasion of Cuba to topple Fidel Castro. This last one failing very badly, returning to Iran in 1953. President Eisenhower and British Prime Minister Sir Winston Churchill both backed Operation Ajax. However, Mossadegh had plenty of popular support within Iran and MI6, and the CIA had to bribe various army officers to stage the coup. Kermit Roosevelt secretly briefed the Shah, who was in on the plot as well. The Shah also received a bribe of $1 million in cash for his support. The coup was executed on the 16th of August 1953 with, by the Shah's order, General Faza Zahedi appointed Prime Minister in Mossadegh's place. But the coup actually didn't go as planned, and the Shah was forced to flee to Baghdad in Iraq and then to Rome to await the outcome of events. MI6 and the CIA tried again. In the meantime, Iranian communists had turned against Mossad. Tehran was soon festooned with red flags, and statues of the Shah were pulled down. The conservative elements in the country largely sided with the Shah. The second coup attempt against Mossad likewise failed. General Zahedi said that he was the prime minister, not Mossad, as he had been appointed by the Shah. The CIA passed on more hefty bribes, and this time pro-SH forces took to the streets. Zahedi